Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. This is your 5-minute Bible bistro, the best on the internet. And we're looking at Psalm 119 today, verses 9 through 16 really all this week, but today 10 and 11. And this is the bait section. This is the second octenary. And last time we talked about the olive section and the word keep. Now we're going to look at not the word keep, but there's another word that's sort of our, I don't want to say action word, it's our prime word. It really sort of sets the theme or gives us the stage upon which all this teaching is done, and that is the word way. There are two different Hebrew words that are translated way in these 8 verses. And we begin with, as we read yesterday, verse 9, how can a young man make his way clean? So it's a young man's way. There's a way that seemeth right unto a man. You know, we all have our way. And so that way sometimes can lead us astray. It can lead us into trouble. And it doesn't lead us into cleanness or righteousness or holiness. It leads us into following the path of our own desires, appetites, and so forth. But there's a way of the Lord, and that's the other word that's used in this passage. And we find it actually twice in the second half of these 8 verses. You know, he says down here in verse 15, I will look to your ways, and 14, in the way of your testimonies. Yeah, in the way of your testimony. So, you see, there's a way that seems right to us. It's his way or our way. In the verse 9, it's his way. But the thing that we're doing is we're studying or we're finding out God's way. When we apply God's way to our way, something happens. Something wonderful transforms. And that's in our heart. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the heart. Because in verse 10, and let me read 10 and 11 for you. With all my heart I have sought you. Do not lead me astray from your commandments. In my heart I have treasured up your words, so that I might not sin against you. What happens when we follow our own way? Well, verse 11, we sin against the Lord because we do it our way and not his way. You see, this is our prime thought here. In this second grouping of 8 verses, this octenary in the bait section, thinking about God's way as opposed to our way. So when it's our way, what do? Well, we sin against the Lord. And if we treasure up his words, that's his way. And if those words are treasured up, or as I think Neale says, it's not just the memorization of the words, but it's the loving meditation on those words, allowing it to be applied to our heart as we treasure them. You know, we're loving them. We're collecting them. It's like a collector collects things and puts them in a lovely display case and keeps them clean and treasures them for always. Well, those words of his become a treasure to us. I have treasured up your words in my heart so that I might not sin against you. And then notice 10, he says, with all my heart I have sought you. Do you remember what we began with in verse 2? In verse 2 it says, blessed are the ones who seek him with the whole heart. Well, here it is again, the whole heart. I'm seeking the Lord, he says, with my whole heart I have sought you. Do not lead me astray from the commandments. Well, that's just like what we had there in verse 8, right? Where in verse 8 he says, do not abandon me, or don't let go. Remember we ended last week. Don't let go of my hand. Don't lead me astray. So again, the same idea. This is that young believer. You know, this is that person that is taking his hand. He's stepping across that threshold of praise and trust and keeping. And now we come to the question, how can a young man keep his way pure or clean? Well, you do it according to your word. And that word, well, it leads us away from sin. It leads us away from my way, and it leads me into the commandments which I treasure in my heart. Now we're going to find verses 12 and 13 tomorrow sort of continue this idea, and we'll look at those on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.